Absolutely. I mean, how many entrepreneurs get into business thinking, oh, I don't want to lose money? No, they go into it because they want to make money. Yeah, you play to win, not you don't play to lose, you don't play to not lose. You play to win.
Hey guys, welcome to the Rewire Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alok Trivedi, aka Dr. Rewire. Today we've got a super inspiring guest for you. This guy he's a legend. He is literally a legend. He's done some amazing things in his life, but his accolades are world record bearing. I mean, seriously, he's climbed Mount Everest, which is, no simple feat on his own, but at the young age, Sean Swarner is a two-time cancer survivor. He's the first cancer survivor to summit Mount Everest. He's the first cancer survivor to complete 7 summits. He's done the Hawaii Ironman finisher. He's the author of the book, Keep Climbing, How I Beat Cancer and Reached the Top of the World internationally, and he's an internationally renowned motivational speaker, president of Swarner Expeditions, co-founder of Cancer Climber Association, mountaineer climber. Please help me welcome Sean Swarner. Sean, thanks for being here, dude.
Hey, my pleasure, man. That's a hell of an intro. I'm honored to be here.
Well, you've lived it. I just read it. You actually lived it, man. That's pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, the thing is, in life, you can have excuses or you can overcome them. We were talking earlier. I had knee surgery 2 days ago, and here I am standing and doing an interview. And what's your excuse?
I don't know. I'm sitting, man. I'm like, what's my excuse? I feel bad now. You're staying.
I mean,
I'm just sitting.
Not you in particular, but just like the general you. Like, people always come up with excuses. Like, what's your excuse? Like, get off your butt and go do something.
It's so true. I couldn't agree with you more, right? But like your journey, like I want to dive into this. I've got questions prepared and all that stuff, but I want to kind of dive into you as a kid, because as a kid you developed cancer twice, and at a very young age inside of that as well, 13 and 16 years old. And I'm sure it taught you so many valuable lessons. But on the Rewire Your Life podcast, I always say that you can either program your life or rewire your life in consciously by using the tools, strategies in order to do it, or events in life are going to show you how to rewire your life and force you into doing it. Either way, you're going to move towards what you're designed and destined to do. That's kind of what I like to say. And in your case, 13 years old, you hear the diagnosis of cancer. What's running through your mind at that point in time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest with you, going back to it, there's a point I remember being 13 when I was diagnosed the first cancer. And I was 60, 70 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe, on my hands and knees in the shower. My hair was falling out in chunks. It was collecting the drain. The water was rising up in the shower, and I'm sobbing on my hands and knees with no hope left. And I'm thinking, okay, well, while I'm getting ready for school, what are my friends doing? Well, they're getting ready for school the same day. They're focused on, well, I mean, flash back to, say, freshman year in high school. It's a popularity contest, right? A guy who's bald, 60 pounds overweight on his deathbed isn't going to be a popular guy. So I'm sitting there with a completely different perspective than most people my age. So I didn't really focus on what they were concerned about. That didn't bother me one bit. I mean, imagine going to bed night after night after night, being terrified to close your eyes because you don't know if they're going to open ever again. That became my evening routine, laying in bed, being terrified to fall asleep. So from a young age, I really developed a different perspective. And I think, going back to rewiring, I chose that perspective. I could have given up and died, or fought for my life, which is exactly what I did. And I chose to fight for my life. I chose to go after what I wanted, not the avoidance of what I didn't want, which is death.
Why did you choose that? Because I mean, I get it. I completely agree with what you're saying. But what made you say, I want to choose this path versus the other? Because that there's a choice point, I think, in my experience and all the research I've done, that there's a choice point, especially with cancer survivors, that they actually say, okay, you know what? I'm going to switch the gear and I'm going to fight this thing, and I'm going to love this thing, or whatever methodology that they want to do, or I'm a victim to it. What was that thing that made you make that switch? Do you remember that?
I don't think there was one certain thing, and it's kind of going through anything traumatic, just like anybody. I thought to myself over and over again, why me? Why me? Why the hell is this happening to me? But that didn't change the facts. The facts were I had cancer. Constantly asking, why is this happening to me, was never going to give me answers.
Sure.
So I finally decided, it is happening to me. These are the facts. What am I going to do about it?
That's it.
And
The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask. And that's an old saying. It's not mine by any means, but it's true, right? And you ask yourself a different question. So you go through this journey and obviously you succeed. Then you go back to the doctor 3 years later and you hear it again. You're diagnosed the second time. Like what's going through a 16-year-old kid at this point, hearing it for the second time?
the first one, honestly, I think I was a little too young to really truly understand the ramifications of cancer.
Yeah, maybe. Sure.
The second time, however, I'm older. I've already gone through it once. I didn't want to go through it again. I knew I was going to lose my friends. I knew I was going to lose my hair. I knew my life was going to be on pause. And I think going back to your other question about what got me through it, or how did I look at it, and I honestly think it wasn't a fear of losing my life. It was just the image of what my parents' lives, what their lives would be like losing their firstborn son.
Hmm.
I think that's what I didn't want to happen to them. I was more concerned about my parents than I was myself. And then the second time around, I really wanted to continue fighting. I thought to myself, looking up, why again?
Yeah,
Like, what the
right, for
hell,
sure.
man?
I think every human being would ask that question, right? Everyone's got to ask that question. Like, again, really? Like,
Yes. And it wasn't like I was, 16. I wasn't a smoker.
yeah,
I was healthy. I was an athlete. I was a competitive swimmer. I ran cross country. I ran track. I was the picture of health. And being the only person in the world to ever have these two cancers, doctors had no idea. They're two completely unrelated primary cancers.
yeah.
The second time around, again, I say I didn't really have a choice, but I did. I could either fight for my life or give up and die. And I was so young, I knew I wanted to live. Even now, I'm more afraid of not living than I am of dying.
I love that answer. I'm afraid of not living than afraid of dying. Like, that's so powerful. Just that distinction. It's such an important distinction, right? Because you value life so much. And I always say, like, I know this is pretty basic, right? But you always value what you potentially could lose. That's when you learn to value it. And for you, like, you've lived your every day literally above ground is an amazing day because you've gone through that journey where you feared mortality. So congratulations to you. And I don't want to, this conversation is not about cancer, but I have to set the premise of what you've done because you've lost a lung in your treatment of this entire thing.
I did the radiation therapy. I was also in a coma for a year of my life, and I was read my last rites. But there's so much radiation. There's so much scar tissue in my right lung now. I essentially have one fully functioning lung. So I had to learn to breathe again.
So you learn to breathe again, and you don't just say, you know what, I want to exist, I want to survive. You say, you know what, I want to go climb the highest point in the world because, you know what, I want to live. I don't want to just live. I want to go to the next level, and I want to take it to the top. So tell me what was that spark that said, you know what, I want to go climb Mount Everest, and then what was everyone saying around you when you decided to do that?
The second part of that question is so much easier to answer than the first one.
Yeah, right. I'm sure.
I remember because I was working on my master's and my doctorate in Jacksonville, Florida, and my parents lived in Hilton Head at the time. So I remember hugging my dad before I drove out to Colorado because the highest point in Florida is the top of the Four Seasons Hotel in Miami. I need to go train in some mountains. So I remember hugging him, and I still remember his voice in the back of my head. And he literally said, "We didn't get you through two cancers to go kill yourself on a hunk of rock and ice." It's legitimate. I understand that. And also, sorry?
Completely fair, right? It's a fair statement.
Absolutely. And I also remember the doctors, my oncologist, he told me that he believed in me, but the majority of people told me it was physiologically impossible to climb Everest with one lung. They thought I was going to die. They thought that hypoxia would set in, or I'd get acute mountain sickness or pulmonary or cerebral edema. But again, that's like fueling the fire. When someone tells me I can't do something, I'm just going to turn around and just tell them, watch me, show them the proverbial middle finger and actually make it happen.
it's such a this skill, right? And I love it. It's when someone says you can't, you're gonna go out and show them how to do it better. And I've said this for many years, is that I think it's one of like the hallmarks of champions, and it's the hallmarks of like the guys like Jordan and Kobe, right? In the basketball world, or the Tiger Woods in golf, right? In back in the day, or anybody that's felt rejected so badly to do what it is that they wanted to do, they finally just said, they built enough resentment in the people around them to say, screw it, I'm just going to go do it. And they have to stand on the shoulders of everyone who's been around them, but they also have to let go of all the people that have come before them. Now, I say that to everyone because I want everyone to kind of hear this in his story, because we're going to take his story and we're going to rip it apart from the standpoint of neurology, and so that we all can learn from this from the standpoint that if any human being is stuck in a state of subordination, they lose the value of empowerment for themselves. And here's what Sean decided to do for himself. He said, you know what? I'm not going to sit and disempower to other people. I'm going to move myself forward. What that does in the brain, that actually moves people from the amygdala more towards the limbic, towards the prefrontal cortex. So Sean, you sit and say, hey, look, I'm going to go move this mountain, for lack of better words, and I'm going to go start training. And everyone says, you know, here's what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. How do you then begin the training process? And what were there's got to be days, I would assume, that you said, this is it, I'm done, like I quit. And let's be real, because you can't sit and say never. That never happened, right? Like this morning's workout, I didn't want to do it. I did it anyways, right? But that's my comfy basement gym. You're climbing mountains. Tell me what's going on through your head in that capacity.
You're absolutely right. And I think even before I began, I had let me back up. It was never about Everest. It was never about getting to the top of Everest. It's what that represented to me. It's what that meant. Yeah. So diving deeper, I had more purpose behind the mountain. I had more meaning behind the mountain. And because I had a deeper purpose and a deeper meaning, it gave me a more passion to go after it. And it was to be, not necessarily be the first cancer survivor to climb Everest, but to show other people the possibilities of the human potential. Mm-hmm. And also maybe to still prove to myself that I was still alive. So every morning I woke up, I had a deeper purpose. I did have those bad days. However, when I did have those bad days, I'm a huge believer, and I'm guessing you are too, in the mind-body connection and vivid visualization. So every evening I went to bed, I would picture myself on the summit, taking the last few steps. I would incorporate the smell of the ozone, the styrofoam crunching of the snow under my feet, the radiation I could feel on my skin, and I would add in all the senses. That's where most people stop. However, again, going back to what the summit meant to me, how did I feel reaching that top point? How did I feel taking the last couple steps to literally the top of the world? And what did that mean to me? So as soon as I tapped into that deeper purpose, I had that passion, I had that meaning that continued pushing me forward every day. So whenever I had those bouts, whenever I was, for example, going up, there's a mountain called Deer Peak, say 13,000 feet, I was carrying 200 pounds in my backpack just to get my legs in shape. Did I want to do that? Absolutely not. But I knew that in my mind's eye, if I was already successful, the difficulty I was going through in the moment was absolutely worth it.
There's so much you just said that I need to unpack, right? From the brain standpoint and from success, fulfillment, whatever way people want to, right? We live in a world today, right? We're recording this on January 3rd, 2022. And people have set their New Year's goals or resolutions, all this that has come into the market space. Everyone does it every year, and they write these big, big goals inside their life, and they never hold on to them. Like, people don't, like, the bigger the goal, the less likely people are going to stick to it, because the brain isn't built that way. But you said something so important earlier in this part of this conversation. You said that it was never about Everest. And I love that answer, because it was never about that. And some of us, right, when we look at success and we watch these people and we see the Ferraris or cars or Lambos, all these things that are in the market space that people say, that's what I want. It was never about the Ferrari. It was never about the big house. It was never about that. What it was about was simply the aspect of living. That's what he said, right? If you caught it, it was about living and living the experience of life. And then eventually it became about Everest because it was the challenge. But if you also caught what he said, he was training on a 13,000 foot mountain to train. So it was one thing after another. And he took the smaller hits to make it practical. to train himself. Now, I bet you inside of it, I would have to bet, like, I'm just trying to give the neurology side of it. I'm using your story to give the exemplification of how the brain works for people. That's kind of what I love to do. It was never about hitting Everest, but I would almost bet that if there was a part of you that never actually hit and climbed Mount Everest, you would not be disappointed in yourself, would you?
Long pause. You're right. I don't think I would be, because I'm enjoying the journey.
Right.
It's not about the destination, and even going back to the cancers, my first goal wasn't to go win, a 5K race for cross country. My first goal was to literally crawl 8 feet from the hospital bed to the bathroom so I wouldn't soil the sheets. Starting there, small little steps. How do you get to the top of Everest? You don't just jump up to Everest base camp and then boom, you're there. Most people don't know you're at base camp and you're climbing the mountains, establishing 4 different zones, 4 different camps. I was there for a month and a half. I got to base camp April 8th, summited May 16th. It's those little pieces, and you have to enjoy the journey. And going back to the cars, the cars, the house, that's going to get old and tarnished. It's not what that stuff, that doesn't bring you the happiness. It's the process. It's the journey. It's what that stuff represents to you.
That's right. That's right. And you've lived and you've lived this, and now we've been able to see this through neurology, through science, where they're showing this, right? Like, daily dopamine hits are valuable, not the TikToks where you're literally on dopamine crack all day long, right? And that's not what I mean, but just moving in the direction of things that you want to do on a day-to-day basis. And just like Sean has done, he's taken this and said, you know what, I want to move and grow and build on a day-to-day basis. Little wins. I like to say that your micro wins lead to a macro life, and that's what Sean is, a living example of that. Right? A living example of that for sure. So you climb the mountains, you come back down, and let's say, what happens after you climb Everest? This is an interesting point and the peak of one's journey in this.
It's interesting, because after I got off Everest, I started thinking about a lot of things that my parents taught me, because I was an athlete. I think I still have records from like 1988.
Wow.
And I was a competitive swimmer from when I was 6 years old. And I can always remember whenever, let's just say I'm doing a 25-meter breaststroke, I touch the wall. Either mom or dad's there, they pull me out of the water. They ask me 2 things. Did you have fun? And did you do your best? They never asked me, why didn't you beat Jimmy? And one thing they've always instilled in me, kind of going back to what you mentioned earlier, I never had to be the best. I had to be my best. So pushing myself a little bit further today than I did yesterday, a little bit further. So after Everest, I wanted to go a little bit further. I mean, I know everything else is downhill from Everest, but
I would think. I'm not a climber, but I would think. But
so there's this thing called the 7 Summits, which is the highest mountain on each continent. And on the top of Everest, the whole time I was climbing, I had a flag that was probably about this big. That had names of people touched by cancer. And it was on a silk flag folded up in my chest pocket, close to my heart, as a constant reminder of why I was on the mountain, which is bringing hope to cancer survivors and patients around the world. Left that flag on the top of Everest, essentially commemorating the struggle of cancer patients worldwide. And then I wanted to do the same thing on each one of the 7 continents. So we collected names, made flags, and now there's a flag that has people who've been touched by cancer on top of each one of the 7 continents. So I continue doing that. I just wanted to give it, basically be an homage for people touched by cancer. And I take a group up Kilimanjaro every year as a fundraiser for cancer charity. We're going February 6th. We're turning it from an expedition into more of an inspedition, which I'd love to talk to you about later on, because it's an internal journey with an outward adventure. But
I love that.
This will be my 22nd trip up Kilimanjaro, where the average success rate is 48%, but my groups are at 99%, tapping into this and tapping into more of a purpose.
So good. You said something there, right? Like it was about being my best, not the best. I want to catch that, number one.
My best.
That was so good. And then you said, basically what you basically said when you put the flags out there, and Nietzsche said this many years ago, so I'd like to just paraphrase it because it's so fitting, is when the why is big enough, the how takes care of itself.
Absolutely.
Right? Nietzsche said that. It wasn't a personal development speaker who said it. It was Nietzsche who said it, like 1912, right? When the how is big enough, the why is big enough, the how takes care of itself. And that's what it was. Your why inside of this was to be a hope of inspiration to people and to do that. So tell me more. I want to hear more about this inspiration versus expedition, because I do a whole piece on this as well. So I'm curious to how you do it, and then I'll share what I do.
Well, it came about because I had been taking a group up Kilimanjaro for years. And like I said, this will be my 22nd trip up. And I realized after some of my keynote presentations where I've spoken to corporations around the world, there would be a long queue of people to share their stories with me. And I love that. I love hearing other people's stories. I love swapping stories. But there would be a select few who came up and would take the conversation further by asking, that's a great story, but how did you do it?
Yeah.
So then that planted the seed, and I started thinking, well, how did I literally go, like I said earlier, crawling 6 feet or 8 feet from the hospital bed to the bathroom to climbing to the top of the world? And you're going back to everything else you've been saying, it's one step after time, but I wanted to put that in some sort of linear fashion. So I've been thinking about that for a long time. And then I did some research after doing the Kilimanjaro trips for 20 some years. And I realized that we had double the success rate. I mean, there has to be something we're doing differently.
Right.
And I think I was unconsciously or subconsciously, you can tell me which one's the proper term there, kind of making the mountain not about the mountain, but making it about the individual. Because I can't tell you how many people go on the trip and they initially say, oh, I'm going to conquer that mountain. But if it's you versus Mother Nature, I don't care who you are, she's going to take you down every single time.
Yep.
You're down. So it's not you conquering the mountain, it's you conquering yourself.
Yes.
And once you have that deeper purpose, that deeper understanding that it's about the journey, it's not about the summit. So we're the only group on the mountain singing, dancing, having a great time, telling jokes. And I tell people that the summit becomes a byproduct of having fun. Do we all want to make it? Absolutely. But we enjoy the journey. So we're turning it from an expedition into an inspedition. Like I said, an internal journey through an outward adventure.
I love that so much. Like, I can't tell you how much that is one of the coolest things I've heard, because most people don't know this. I like to say that I'm an inspirational speaker, not a motivational speaker. And the reason why is this, is we're like, oh, well, inspirational people, like they're guys like you, right? Like who have, one lung climbing mountains. And that's true. It's an inspiration that, but inspiration, the root word is respiration, right? To breathe. And to inspire is to breathe life into, to give something life. As a health and human performance expert, that's what I do. I give people health and life inside of it. So they breathe. But expiration is taking life away. It's death. And what you've done is you've taken this exactly in the same fashion, and you've made this in climbing, which is your highest values, what you do, and taken it into an inspedition and versus expedition. An expedition is about the mountain. Inspedition is about you as a person, which is what breathes life in it. It's why there's no question the way the brain works, no question why you have such a high level of success inside of it. It's motivation versus inspiration all day long. It's so powerful.
See, I would love to take it even a step further, because I've been approached by Google before and IBM and some other corporations. And I tell them, if you're looking for an inspirational speaker, you got the wrong guy. If you're looking for a motivational speaker, you got the wrong guy. If you're looking for an empowering speaker, then you got the right guy. Because as soon as you can empower someone, because inspiration and motivation lasts, say, a week, maybe tops.
For sure.
But if you can empower somebody with their personal core values, so you give them more of a purpose and a reason behind it, then you can change their life forever.
There's no question. Once you give them that, then they become empowered to live, to grow, and do what they were designed to do, which is what you're doing, right? You got empowered inside that. What they're designed to do is uniquely designed to them. Like, if someone said to me, Dr. Trivedi, take me up Mount Kilimanjaro, I'd say you'd be smoking some serious crack, because
I wouldn't even know where to take you up. I want to take you up sometime.
I'm like, there's a part of me that's itching to go. I'm not gonna lie. My cousin did it, and he's like, you would love it. I climbed a mountain. I'm not gonna lie. It was a really big mountain. It was about 6,000 square feet, okay, or 6,000 feet. It was huge. It was a big deal for me. And but we did this in Bali. I don't remember the name of the mountain. Shoot, it was a volcano, nonetheless. And we climbed it. We get to the top of this thing. It's kind of like and I'm totally butchering this, so please bear in my novice ignorance in this. But it was kind of baseline, then kind of like to the top. It kind of did this really steep, right? It was pretty high steep, but there. I assume all mountains are like that, but this one they said was a little bit more like that. So I said, okay, fine. So we did it. It was like a 2-hour climb or something like that. But we got to the top, and you're supposed to watch sunrise there, or the sunrise there. And I remember going up, and you're above the clouds, and you watch the sunrise. And I'll tell you, it was like I cried with such inspiration. Like there was nothing like that moment of seeing the sun from that space. And you know that whatever your take is on divinity, life, whatever it is you want to call it, you're just in a state of gratitude. Like there's nothing other than that that explains that. And I'm sure like my experience of that is my experience of it, but for the amount of work and effort you put for Kilimanjaro and Everest, like you've got to get that the first time you did it, but do you still get it every single time?
I do. And now that you mention it, it's so Kilimanjaro, it's not about the mountain anymore. Again, like I said, it never was, but I know I can make it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know being up there enough times, I'm on the trail, I look down, like, oh, I recognize that rock. That was there last time I was here.
Sure.
I think you get to a point where it's a lot like Christmas, and you get more out of giving than you do receiving gifts.
Mm.
So what I really, really enjoy is watching people go. So there's a moment when people are at the hotel, miles and miles and miles away from the mountain. They look up at it and they see the glaciers on top, which look like clouds. So they look at me and they're like, those are clouds, right? And in that moment, when I start laughing, I'm like, you're having what I call a Euro shit moment. Like you start freaking out.
Yeah.
But it's fun watching them go through the transition from that moment to a little bit more encouragement, to a little bit more empowerment, and then how in an instant their life changes when they reach the top. Because when you were on the top of the mountain in Bali, it's very similar to being on the top of the highest point in Africa, because you're psychologically drained, you're physically drained, you're emotionally drained, you're spiritually drained. You're seeing the sunrise come up over Kenya, and that's when the waterworks come on. So in a roundabout way, I enjoy, and this is going to come out really bad now that I'm thinking about it, I enjoy watching people cry. I enjoy seeing those emotions come out. I enjoy seeing the transformation in someone's life. And when they come off the mountain, they're a different person. And we had a guy a few years ago, he was an active duty Marine. And he was up there just in tears, this big, tough dude, but he was in tears. And he actually, he covered it up by looking around. He came up and he hugged me. He's crying. He goes, it's such a long way down, like covering it up. But that moment when I can see in their eyes, their life changes, that's the empowerment. That's the gift that I get.
Yeah. I love that. I'm kind of, you and I are similar in that respect. Like watching people cry is kind of my thing, because I have tools and processes, my seminars, events, like people cry all the time. Like my kids are like, oh, Dad, you make anyone cry today? And it's like, yeah, we have t-shirts that say Tears by Trivedi. Like it's a normal thing in my world, because that release of tears is not crying from a state of, sadness. It's gratitude tears, just inspirational tears, which I love, which is what I love about your work and my work. It's very similar, right? In this aspect of what we're getting people to do, but we're taking our own unique vantage points of our own strengths to get people to do it there, to get transformation and healing and inspiration, which is what I love. You have a wonderful way that you look at transversing any obstacle, and it's called Gale. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Gale. So the Gales are the four things that really hold you back. I'm shocked you found those. It's the gremlins, the interpretations, the assumptions, and the limiting beliefs. The hardest one to get over is the gremlin. It's that little voice on your shoulder who is constantly in your ear. You're like, you're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. Oh, they're all going to laugh at you. You can't do that. And I honestly think at some point in my life or anyone's life, that voice was there to protect you. Mm-hmm. And as you age, you get the confidence, you get the skills, but you still have that voice. And I've named mine is Cooper. His name's Cooper. So whenever I hear that little voice, I'm like, dude, stop, Cooper, shut up. Yeah. I know you're in my life at some point to protect me. However, we both want what's best for us. We both want what's best for me. Why don't we work together to make that happen? So I've learned to pay attention to that voice in my mind when it's needed, like when I'm going up a mountain and say the avalanche danger is high. I'm not going to put myself in any risk. But when I say voices, I don't mean like, I need a straight jacket and a padded room. I'm talking about like just the internal dialogue.
No, everyone has it. It's a normal thing,
Exactly.
right? It's the internal conversation we all live with. It's normal, completely normal.
Exactly. So name your gremlin and talk with him. Figure it out, because here's the year I was born. Here's the year I'm going to die. Figure out the best path that makes you happy along the way. And it's not being afraid of stuff. It's not avoiding things. It's going after what you want. So going back to that young child who was 13, 14 years old on the bottom of the shower floor on his hands and knees, I didn't focus on not dying. I focused on living. So don't go after what you want, not the avoidance of what you don't.
There's a great speaker named Larry Wilson. He passed away many years ago. He was a legend. Larry Wilson used to say that there's a difference between playing in fear and playing to win versus playing in fear. There's a vast difference. And playing to win is very different. And you're talking about living life to play to win, not to fear loss. Like, that's the game.
Absolutely. I mean, how many entrepreneurs get into business thinking, oh, I don't want to lose money? No, they go into it because they want to make money.
For sure.
Yeah, you play to win, you don't play to lose, you don't play to not lose. You play to win.
That's right. You play to win. That's exactly
I love that. Yeah.
Larry Wilson, you should check him out. His stuff is it's hard to get your hands on his things now, but they're the books that changed the course of my life. They're brilliant. And then I had a chance to meet Larry and speak with him, and he was brilliant in his right. Look, Sean, I just want to tell you, man, you are an inspiration, and you're slowly getting me to turn and maybe even say yes to going up Kilimanjaro. I'm not going to lie. Not there yet 100%, but I'm thinking about it. And I'm not at the oh shit moment, but I'm thinking, like, how can I turn this into an inspirational activity for me, my family, and the people who want to join me in this adventure? I think that'd be a lot of fun, because I think it'd be a nice thing to try and do. So I'm there. We're going to talk further about this, and we'll see how we get there. But how do people get a hold of you? What do you want to share to people? It's 2022. Life is about to hit. What do you want to tell people? One final statement.
Well, going back to what my parents said, I never had to be the best. I had to be my best. Mm-hmm. And the way to do that is finding what I value most. How many people have never taken time to sit down and figure out what their personal core values are? I gave a keynote speech a couple weeks ago, and I asked that as my closing statement. 3 hands out of 1,000 maybe came up. I'm like, how can you move forward in life going after goals and dreams if you don't know what means most to you?
So I couldn't agree with you more, right? Like, that's kind of the pillar of my work, is that knowing your values and your identity, knowing who you are allows you to do so much. And that's exactly what you're saying. I love that. How do people get in touch with you, Sean?
That's simple. Just go to SeanSwarner.com. Sean like Sean Connery, and Warner Brothers, just slap an S on the front.
There you go. SeanSwarner.com. Look, Sean, I want to thank you for being here, for being part of this. Your story, your adventure is amazing. I can't wait to get to know you more and get you back on the show after you climb another 12 mountains at the same time, and kind of hear more of the story as you kind of develop and expand this, because your story is so powerful to help people understand who they are. And it relates to them so that they can overcome any mountain in their life. And I want to thank you for being who you are and what you do in the journey to help other people get inspired to live a life of inspiration. So thank you for that, man. I appreciate it.
That's beautiful. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to take on a 7-day trip up and down Kilimanjaro in a few weeks.
There you go. I appreciate it. For those of you who are listening inside of this Rewire Your Life podcast, I'm Dr. Alok Trivedi, aka Dr. Rewire. I want to thank you guys for being here. If this podcast has been valuable, share with your friends, like it, share it, do all that good social media stuff. I'll see you guys on another video or another podcast next time. Take care. Thanks a lot. Hey guys, if you like that video, click on the link over here and you're going to love the next video.